North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, and then we debate. It's the Wells Report. It's the newscast you should be able to see in a lot more places than this one. But unfortunately, you just don't. The mainstream media has abandoned truth and chosen political sides. This is the antidote. Just thought you'd like to know. So we broadcast every day live from 2 until 5, unless, of course, my son and I have lived like slobs, and my wife being out of town while we were living like slobs, she was going to come back, so I had to clean the house yesterday, and I did. I did a fantastic job. Okay, I did a good job. I picked up the house and took it. Okay. No. I did some real serious cleaning, man. I mopped and I did bathrooms and I vacuumed. Gosh, I was busy. So sorry you missed the show yesterday. I did too. Hopefully that won't be happening. Although next week I got something else going. So we'll work something out on that. It's not going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No problem. Thursday might. Friday probably out of the question, but we'll work that out, and I'll have an announcement for you coming up after the first of the week. Former Trump White House strategist Steve Bannon has been sentenced to 4 months in prison today, 3 months after his conviction on charges of contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena from the Special House Committee investigating the January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols granted a defense request that the flamboyant advisor to former President Donald Trump be allowed to remain free, pending an appeal. The Justice Department had sought a 6-month term for Bannon and recommend he pay a maximum fine of $200,000 for his, quote, sustained bad faith, unquote. And then went on to say, from the moment the defendant, Stephen K. Bannon, accepted service of a subpoena from the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, he has pursued a bad faith strategy of defiance and contempt. This, according to prosecutors in court documents ahead of the sentencing today. Today, the judge recalled the violence of the Capitol attack, said the January 6th committee had every reason to investigate that day. Others must be deterred from committing similar crimes. Bannon, who was ordered to pay a $6,500 fine, left the courthouse after the ruling, but not before criticizing the Justice Department in front of a crowd of reporters. The American people are weighing and measuring what went on with the Justice Department, said Bannon, referring to the coming midterm elections. They will vote on November 8th. Yes, they will. Bannon mostly remained silent during the hearing, telling the court only that my lawyers have spoken for me. His attorney, David Shane, criticized the January 6th committee, which held a series of high-profile hearings on its findings this year, as illegitimate, and said that Bannon tried to act within the law. Quite frankly, Mr. Bannon should make no apology. No American should make an apology for the way Mr. Bannon proceeded in this case, said Shane, who later said that Bannon has an appeal that is bulletproof. The Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Cooney said Bannon, quote, could not have committed a more malicious contempt of Congress, unquote, in defying the subpoena. Throughout the entire case, said Attorney Cooney, the defendant has tried to make it all about politics and retribution. This man, Stephen Bannon, should be treated like any other citizen. Any other citizen. Any other citizen. The House committee sought documents and testimony from the former Trump advisor. Bannon flouted the committee's authority, ignored the subpoena's demand. According to the government's filing, quote, throughout the pendency of this case, the defendant has exploited his notoriety through courthouse press conferences and his War Room podcast to display the public a source of his bad faith refusal to comply with the committee subpoena, a total disregard for the government process and the law. A total disregard for government processes and the law. Let's go back. Let's go back in time. The House has voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress over his failure to turn over documents related to the Fast and Furious scandal. By the way, that killed a Border Patrol agent with a weapon that was allowed to be sold illegally in the United States by the Justice Department as a pretext for more stringent gun control law. They lost track of the weapons as they were sold in Arizona and then smuggled across the border. One ended up in the hands of a cartel member who shot Border Patrol agent Brian Terry and killed him with it. Let's see. An opportunity to play politics with Steve Bannon, an attorney general who breaks the law in order to create law and gets a Border Patrol agent killed. Which of those two events needed more congressional oversight? Let me think. The vote was 255 to 67. 17 Democrats voted in support of a criminal contempt resolution, which authorized Republican leaders to seek criminal charges against Holder. The Democrat support came despite a round of behind-the-scenes lobbying by senior White House and Justice officials, as well as pressure from party leaders to support Eric Holder. And so what ends up happening? This, by the way, from August 6th, 2014. Here's what happened in court when Eric Holder went. A federal judge has declined a House committee's bid to have Attorney General Eric Holder held in contempt of court and perhaps even jailed for failing to turn over documents related to the Justice Department response to Operation Fast and Furious. However, in a ruling, U.S. District Court Judge Amy Berman Jackson also denied Holder's request for an indefinite stay of her prior order that the Attorney General must turn over any non-privileged documents the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, then in the hands of Republicans, subpoenaed as part of an investigation into the botched gun-running investigation. The judge previously ruled that Holder must give the panel any documents that are not both pre-decisional and deliberative in nature. Jackson called the House contempt motion, quote, entirely unnecessary, unquote, said it was evident that she was considering the government's motion to lift her prior order. Under those circumstances, the court finds no basis to hold the defendant in contempt, unquote. Let's see here. Who have we got? What do we got here? Amy Berman Jackson. Yeah, I know what we should do. Let's just go over here to the old Computronicus. Amy Berman Jackson. Amy Berman Jackson. Amy Berman Jackson. Let's see. She is serving as the United States District Judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. She's 68 years old. Her spouse is Daryl Jackson. She has a child named Matt. She graduated from Harvard Law, and the Park School of Baltimore. Let's see. She was appointed by President Barack Obama. Huh. Let's see here. Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was, let's see. Let's go to U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols. And I'm doing this live, by the way. Let's see. Carl Nichols. Carl Nichols. Let's see. Carl John Nichols is a United States District Judge of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. He's 52. He went to Simsbury High School, the University of Chicago, and Dartmouth College. Surprisingly enough, and this is good, he was appointed by Donald Trump. Okay. So let's see. Steve Bannon gets a contempt of Congress citation, basically of a political nature. Eric Holder gets a contempt of Congress citation for a gun-running operation that cost the life of a Border Patrol agent named Brian Terry. The district judge appointed by Barack Obama doesn't prosecute Eric Holder. The district judge, the federal district judge appointed by Donald Trump, decides to uphold the court of law, the actual laws of the United States, and sentences Bannon. Let me ask you this. I have two questions. Question number one. Is this fair? Is this a fair sentence? Is this fair? And two, is Steve Bannon another Democrat/progressive political prisoner? Yes or no, and why? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Is Steve Bannon going to jail for contempt of Congress for the January 6th committee? Is he going to jail fair? Yes or no, and why? Yes or no, and why? And is Steve Bannon another political prisoner thanks to the Democrat left and progressives? 817-379-2172. So there you go. Just now, that's not whataboutism. What that is confronting hypocrisy, pointing out a two-tiered justice system. That's what this is. Did Steve Bannon commit contempt of Congress? Yes. Should he go to jail? Yes. Is this a fair sentence? Yes. As things currently lie, there may be some kind of a legal maneuver that'll get him out of this particular conviction. Okay, that's fine too. But if indeed this sentence is fair, then what happened with Eric Holder is not. Correct? Can we agree on that much? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. My fellow citizens, what we have to do here is we have to decide whether or not we have laws in this country and whether or not they should be upheld. We also have to figure out just exactly why it is that America's justice system can be bought and paid for with politics. And we've seen that over and over and over again. This hypocrisy is going to get us. We need to stop it in its tracks. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. And somebody just pointed out, what happened, JD? All your fishing shirts in the cleaners? Oops. Okay, so I played golf earlier today and I forgot to change my shirt. I'll go get my fishing shirt on here in just a couple of seconds. I'm going to go get my fishing shirt on, and it'll be Fishing Shirt Friday as we continue on the Wells Report. Again, our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The news, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. There. Fishing Shirt Friday. Boy, this is a nice one, too. I think this is my favorite one. Even though I like this shirt so much, I got one that's way too big for me because this was the only size they had. It's 2X. Let me tell you something, man. This is a great shirt. This is Magellan. You go down to Walmart and you find these things. They're fantastic. Absolutely love them. So you're listening and watching the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. We have all kinds of really cool things that you can do to take part in the debate. You can call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172. By the way, if you do call me on the telephone to take part in the broadcast, I don't need a new warranty for my car, and I do not own the house at 806 Halewood Drive in Houston. Okay? All right, so going back, we also have a chat room. The chat room is cool. You can chat in the room. That's why it's called a chat room. So Bannon had some things to say after his sentencing today, and like I said, he is going to appeal this sucker. So let's see just how far that goes.
As usual,
we love that vote.
As usual, the judge listened carefully and entered a decision that he thought was appropriate. We certainly fully respect the judge's decision, but we will be filing a notice of appeal, as the judge indicated. Very grateful to the judge for thinking through the issues candidly, and it's an extraordinary move to permit a stay pending appeal. It was the appropriate move. The standard is whether the case raises substantial issues that reasonable jurists could differ over, meaning is there a solid chance for an appeal to be successful? And there certainly is more than that in this case. I've said before, and I would confirm it, I believe that the appeal in this case is bulletproof. The constitutional issues involved in this case are very important, but Mr. Bannon never got to tell the reasons for his actions with respect to the subpoena, never got to tell his story because the government insisted from day one on prohibiting any mention, any evidence, or any discussion to go before the jury as to why Mr. Bannon reacted as he did to the subpoena on the advice of counsel. Thank you very much. Look forward to adjudicating the appeal.
Your silence.
This is Steve
His
Bannon.
silence was in my direction.
Yeah. Hang on. I want.
This is Steve Bannon.
By the way, I want to say one thing. I respect the judge. The sentence he came down with today is his decision. I fully respect. I've been totally respectful of this entire process on the legal side. I also want to make one other statement before I talk about a broader topic. More than any person in the Trump administration, I testified before the Mueller Commission for more hours. I testified in front of Chair Schiff in the House Intelligence Committee more than any other person in the Trump administration. I testified in front of the Senate Intelligence, I think more than any, all about the issues related to Russiagate, to all of that. Okay, the same process every time. I had lawyers that were engaged. They worked through the issues of privilege. And at that time, I went and testified. And this thing about I'm above the law is an absolute and total lie. Now, more importantly, the judge, today was my judgment day by the judge. And he stated for the appeal, we'll have a very vigorous appeals process. I've got a great legal team. And there'll be sign says right there, can we have the vote deal? But is that sign says right there, can we have the vote sign? On November 8th, on November 8th, there's going to have judgment on the illegitimate Biden regime. And quite frankly, that Nancy Pelosi and the entire committee.
All right, so there you go. That is Steve Bannon, who is making his point after he was sentenced to 4 months and fined $6,500. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Interesting. It said jail all coup plotters. Gee, I wonder if James Comey and Alan and Andrew McCabe and all of those guys, Peter Strzok, Rod Rosenstein, I wonder if they're shaking in their boots right now. Probably not. This is the Wells Report. We will be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. I want to thank you very much for being with us today. So if you find value in this show, and I certainly hope you do, please share it with your friends. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe. Please do all of those things. If you'd like to put your money where my mouth is, then go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. patreon.com/The Wells Report. Please do. You can sign up to toss me $1 or $2 or $5. It's really all you need to do. It's all you got to do. You don't have to worry about any bigger number than that. Although there have been people that have been very generous, and I sincerely appreciate it. God bless all y'all. This is an independent broadcast. There is no subsidy from, say, for example, a radio corporation or a broadcasting corporation. There is no subsidy that supports this broadcast. It's just me and you. And if you find value in this show, it would be nice if you could help us out. Otherwise, don't worry about it. So Mike Pence was speaking someplace. I believe it was politics, the Institute of Politics and Public Service. He was doing a lecture there, and somebody asked him about the possibility that he might even run for the presidency against Donald Trump, or who he would vote for in 2024.
Mr. Pence, if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president in 2024, will you vote for him?
Well, there might be somebody else I'd prefer more. You know, what I can tell you is I have every confidence that the Republican Party is going to sort out leadership. All my focus has been on the midterm elections, and it'll stay that way for the next 20 days. But after that, we'll be thinking about the future, ours and the nation's, and I'll keep you posted. Okay.
All right. So that's Mike Pence. Mike Pence is a complete
Introducing the
whoa. Turn down the wrong one. Anyway, Mike Pence is a complete professional, and this nation could do far, far worse than having Mike Pence as the president of the United States. At least that's what I'm thinking so far. Let's wait and see how he speaks when he's on the campaign trail, if that's the case. That being said, President Trump did have some ideas regarding Mike Pence and the presidency, and he was speaking with Brian Kilmeade on Fox News. Former President Donald Trump joined the Brian Kilmeade show today to address the possibility of a second presidential bid in the 2024 election. Trump and other potential 2024 candidates and challengers were addressed by President Trump on how he would handle running against rumored nominees who served in his cabinet, such as former Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. The former president said he would probably decide in the not-too-distant future as to whether to seek the White House again. The polls, Trump touted his polling showing that he is the leading 2024 prospective candidate among Republican voters. The polls have me leading by 40 or 50%, or 50 points, he said, expressing his doubts many challengers would run against him if he chose to run. Many of them have said they would never run if I do, so we'll see whether or not that turns out to be true. I think it would be very disloyal if they did. And then he went on to say, but that's okay too. I'll probably decide in the not-too-distant future we have to make this country great again. He then touted a bunch of his accomplishments and knocked the Biden administration for their handling of the border, energy, and the economy. We had energy independence. We were respected all over the world. We had low taxes. We had no inflation. We had the strongest border in history. We had all of these things. It was so beautiful. And now look at our country. Our country is a failed country. We really are a nation in decline. President Trump said Russian President Vladimir Putin would not have invaded Ukraine if he had remained in office. He slammed the Biden administration energy policy, saying the high price of oil is funding the Russian war effort. Putin respected me. We didn't play games, and it wouldn't have happened. Right now, oil is so expensive that Putin can continue to go. His money is not going to be the problem. Pence, day before yesterday, suggested he might not support former President Trump in the presidential election if he was the GOP nominee. He will. If President Trump is the nominee, Mike Pence will certainly support Donald Trump. Following his remarks at Georgetown University, Pence was asked by a student if he would vote for Trump should he become the Republican nominee in 2024. And with laughter in the background, he said, well, there might be somebody else I prefer more. Well, that's true. And to be perfectly honest with you, I voted for President Trump twice. I voted for President Trump twice. Will I vote for him again? It depends on who runs. There are a couple of people in there that I'm very, very interested in. Actually, all three of them that have been mentioned so far. Nikki Haley, incredibly capable person. Mike Pence, one of the most professional politicians I have ever seen. Mike Pompeo. We have not had a presidential candidate with the level of resume enhancements that Mike Pompeo has. That guy is a star, an absolute star. Now, what I pointed out before is when it comes to 2024, I'm extremely concerned about the idea of more system politicians running the country. I think we can all agree that regardless of your party, the problem that we have in this nation are politicians. And I just throw a blanket over all of them. And what is that blanket made out of? Well, it's made out of shredded $1 bills woven into a 50 bazillion ton quilt that suffocates and strangles this nation. $31 trillion of national debt, and not a single one of these people has actually put forward a serious effort to do anything about it. Although President Trump is saying, my goodness gracious, look at what we've done. We spent $1.9 trillion plus another $750 billion, so that's $2.5 trillion, and we're cutting the budget deficit. Excuse me? The budget deficit, not the national debt. The budget deficit. That's the amount of money overspent by the federal government. I'm sorry. How is it that you can be $31 trillion in national debt? Or how is it that you can have such a behemoth, unbelievably horse-choking gob of federal budget so big that you can cut $1 trillion out of the deficit? What are you doing? And, you can certainly criticize politicians in general for this. But I think it's unfair for you to say, well, Joe Biden is responsible for this incredible national debt, or Donald Trump is responsible for this incredible national debt, or Barack Obama is incredible for this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The person responsible for this incredible federal debt in the mainstream is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Because he's the guy that came up with Social Security, the number one drain on the United States budget. Social Security. Now, was Social Security the same program when FDR put it together that it is now? No. This is what happens when you don't understand the possibilities of the project that you start today, what it might become in the future. Another great example of that is the Department of Homeland Security, which has, by the way, become the Department of Homeland Political Security. Yeah, it's the secret police. It's awful. And so now we find ourselves in a position where, okay, we got a government that's running away with itself. And once again, who's empowering it? Who's riding that pony? All these politicians. So yeah, I have a problem with system-captured politicians continuing to be the people in high office in this land. Now, I realize that Mike Pompeo may be insulated from some of that. He's not somebody who has, as far as I know, been elected to public office. Although he might have been a member of the House of Representatives. I'm not exactly sure. I'll look it up during the break. But Mike Pompeo is a former director of the CIA. He is a former Secretary of State. He is a graduate of West Point. He is a brilliant thinker. And he's also a very capable, well-trained dude. I want to see what he has to say. But then again, you also have to be able to get elected. Donald Trump, I do not believe, would have any problems getting elected. Unless, of course, there were some fascinating things happening in the middle of the night after Election Day. Strange things happened that night. This was so weird. That being said, so would Mike Pence support Donald Trump if he was the nominee? Absolutely, he would. Would Donald Trump support Mike Pence if Mike Pence was the nominee? Probably. I would say probably so. Probably even campaign for the guy. Nikki Haley, I don't know. Mike Pompeo, I don't know that Trump would be any interested in helping any of those people, but I'm pretty sure that he would get into line, as that would be the right thing to do if he was somebody who wanted to stay in political life. Of course, it could be that he would run for public office in 2024. President Trump would run for the presidency in 2024, not get there from here, and then leave public life. I could see that happening as well. I could, especially the way he's been treated. So 2024, I know it's still 19 days before the election of 2022. I know. But this is the news. This is the news. And what Donald Trump says and what Donald Trump believes, et cetera, is important to this nation. Whether you agree or not. Whether you agree or not. Remember what's going on here. The politicians are the ones screaming. The politicians are the ones talking about how terrible Donald Trump is. That should tell you something. That should tell you something. You know, you're not badly served. If you're a Democrat, for example, a Democrat now, listen carefully to my words. You're not badly served and weren't badly served by the Donald Trump presidency. Now, if you're a progressive, Donald Trump was disastrous for you. Absolutely disastrous for you. And if he comes back to office, he's going to be an even bigger disaster for you. Same story with the mainstream media. The mainstream media went all in on keeping President Trump out of office. Absolutely destroyed their credibility. Absolutely destroyed their credibility. I don't know that they're not going to get it back in my lifetime. You know, I'm planning on living into my mid-90s. And that gives me about 30 more years. And I will tell you that I don't see the FBI ever being able to climb out of this. At least during my lifetime. And that's a generation. And they don't deserve it either. You know, in the background of, I mentioned this, you know, going into the break at the bottom of the hour. Steve Bannon was talking about his sentencing of 4 months and $6,500 fine. And there was a guy back there that coup plotters should go to jail. Rod Rosenstein was a coup plotter. John Brennan, then director of the FBI, was a coup plotter. James Comey, then director of the FBI. Did I say John Brennan, CIA director? James Comey, the director of the FBI. Andrew McCabe, deputy director of the FBI. James Clapper, secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. All of those people pulled off a coup against the President of the United States. And the more you find out about it, the more solid that case is. It absolutely is. Now, the question is, do the people of the United States care? Do you care whether or not this country is run on the up and up as a democracy, as a representative democracy? Do you believe that political prisoners are a bad idea in the United States of America? I happen to believe that that is exactly the case. It's terrible and it's awful, in fact, that we would even have this discussion. You are listening to The Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for being here today. This is The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, and I want to thank you very much for being a part of our show today. I just got a phone call on the wrong line. That's how I know I don't have to answer it. It's wonderful. You are welcome to be here with us on The Wells Report and the chat room, as long as you're nice. You know, I sure would appreciate it if you were. And all those people that are nice are my friends, and those people that annoy my friends, well, I appreciate their presence as long as they're not a distraction. And if they are a distraction, well, perhaps you should seek your entertainment elsewhere. This is The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you would learn in civics class if you went to school when I went to school. There's less than a month until the midterm elections. In fact, 17 days. Voters who are faced with circumstances that make it difficult to vote at the polls may opt for an absentee ballot. This from USA Today. Election day is November 8th. Every state has their own deadlines for absentee ballot voters. You have to get an absentee ballot in before the deadline, or it just doesn't get counted. That's all there is. U.S. Postal Service recommends mailing your request to vote absentee and your vote ballot at least 1 week prior to your state's deadline. The U.S. Postal Service recommends mailing your request to vote absentee and your voted ballot at least 1 week prior to your state deadline. Although some states will accept ballots postmarked on Election Day that arrive within a specific time frame. As far as I'm concerned, that's a no-go. That is a no-go. If you want to vote, you have to have your vote in by Election Day. There are no votes accepted after Election Day. And if you miss it, if you miss the deadline, that's on you. That's all there is to it. That's one of the problems with voting absentee. You can vote absentee, but if you miss the deadline, then your vote is moot. And that's the way it ought to be. And those states that have that other problem, well, there you go. Let's see. Here's what you need to know about submitting absentee ballots in every state. You can go to USA Today, and you can find a link there. Okay. You can also go to vote.org and the National Conference of State Legislatures, the NCSL. Okay. With the exception of 8 states that hold all mail elections, which registered voters are mailed ballots: California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Washington. Absentee ballots can be requested by visiting or calling your local board of elections. All states may accept mailed ballot requests. Most will accept electronic requests, such as email or fax, and provide the form online to fill out, print, and mail to your local election officials. That's the best way of doing it. Some states have ballot drop boxes. Many let you return your ballot in person at your local election office or another location. At least 19 states offer online portals where voters can request an absentee ballot. Let's see. If you're not sure where to find the website you need, visit the online directory of election offices to find out local contact information in your state. Be mindful of when mail is delivered and picked up at your mailbox. If you haven't received a ballot and your election is close, can you track your ballot? Many states have tools to check the status of voter ballots. Check the online ballot tracking chart. If your state offers ballot tracking, there will be an X next to it. Click on that for more information. Do you need a reason to vote absentee? Some states require a specific reason that affirms the voter is unable to vote in person on Election Day, and acceptable reasons vary by state. Most reasons include being unable to get your polling place due to sickness, injury, disability, business travel or vacation, being a student or out of state, college or university, or if, say, for example, you're deployed in the United States military, some far-flung place fighting for freedom and liberty. Some states offer a permanent absentee ballot option for those voters who want to vote absentee in future elections. In emergency cases, absentee ballots can be requested after normal deadlines. Again, I am not a big fan. Not a big fan. I don't believe that there should be any votes that are accepted after Election Day, period, for any reason whatsoever. At all. A list of states requiring excuses to vote absentee can also be found in this article. Can you still vote in person if you have an absentee ballot? Every state has different rules to vote in person on Election Day if you received a mail-in ballot, which is different than an absentee ballot. Requirements may include taking an absentee ballot to a designated polling place and exchanging an absentee ballot for an in-person one, completing the absentee ballot and handing it in, or casting a provisional ballot. Let's see. Early and in-person absentee voting are similar, but experts categorize them separately for being functionally different. Each voting is akin to voting on Election Day, whereas in-person absentee voting requires a voter to request, complete, and sign a ballot in a polling place. 46 states, 5 U.S. territories offer early in-person voting. Early voting can begin as soon as 55 days before an election. The average number of days allotted for early in-person voting is 23. Alabama, Connecticut, Mississippi, New Hampshire residents cannot vote early unless they're deemed to have an eligible absentee voter by the state. No excuse absentee voting, available in 35 states and the District of Columbia, allows voters to request and cast an absentee or mail-in ballot without a specific reason. And that, unfortunately, is fraught with peril. And, oh, by the way, corruption as well. So there you go. That is the latest on absentee ballots. It's the Wells Report Civics class. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much to USA Today to make that possible. Back with more in just a couple of moments. Hour number 2, in fact, next on the Wells Report. Yes. All right. We will see you in a little bit, okay? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble. I ran out of video time on Venmo. And the budgetary concerns when it comes to Venmo are important enough so that I can't be on that platform right this very moment. But who knows? Who knows what happens next? So, we bring you the news. We analyze the news for commentary and debate. Excuse me. We analyze the news for bias and debate. Okay, let me try this one more time. Let's try this one more time. Can we try this one more time? Hi, this is the Wells Report. We report the news honestly. We analyze the news for bias and fact. We point out both. Then what we do is make commentary, and then we debate. That's how all that goes. I slipped into automatic pilot, and bad things ensued. And so there you go. By the way, I want to thank the folks that showed up from this broadcast last night at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas. I was with a part of a brand new band, actually. It's Flowers, Pierce, Wells, and Nunn. Had a great time with my bandmates. We sounded pretty good. There was kind of a little malfunction on Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I got that one wrong. I played drums. Nah, I didn't play that right. And I found out today because I started actually doing some research into how badly I played it wrong, and I could not have muffed it worse. And so I've got myself a new way of practicing that, so I'll be able to play that song. And there you go. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for, like I said, finding us here. And let's get on with the news, shall we? We are talking a little bit about this was breaking news earlier today. It came out of the New York Times. And let's talk this over. While former President Trump has suggested he might testify live before the committee, it was far more likely that the demand for him to appear would lead to a protracted legal fight. What is this all about? Well, the January 6th panel issued a subpoena to former President Donald Trump, setting up a legal battle over his testimony. This is borrowed trouble from the New York Times. President Trump said, "I'd love to testify. I'd absolutely love to testify." Okay, so there you go. Luke Broadwater and Michael Schmidt write this for the New York Times. The House committee investigating the January 6th attack issued a subpoena on Friday to Donald Trump today, paving the way for a potentially historic fight over whether Congress can compel testimony from a former president. In point of fact, this has already been settled. They cannot. The subpoena was the most aggressive step taken so far by what was already one of the most consequential congressional investigations in decades, which says something about congressional investigations. It wasn't an investigation. They weren't investigating anything. All they were doing was building a prosecution case against President Donald Trump. And that might work just fine for, say, for example, I don't know, a grand jury, right? That might work for a grand jury, but that's not what congressional committees are for. They're supposed to try to find truth. How do you find truth when only one side is ever being represented? How do you do that? And they say, well, John David, you dumb butt, you crazy man. Mike McCarthy had his chance to put his people on that committee, and he just decided not to. Well, he actually did put people on the committee, but the committee said, no, we don't want those people. They really didn't have that choice to make. They do because they're the ranking party. But they shouldn't have done that. And I got to be perfectly honest with you. If I'm the chairman of that committee, then I go out and I find people to represent the president. I go out and find people. I do exactly what this committee did. I don't subpoena the president. I send him a letter. I say, Mr. President, who do you believe is the best person to represent your case? And I go out and I find those people and I put them on the stand and I ask them questions. That's what I do. But then again, when I see some, person that's just blindly mouthing the orthodoxy of the leftist progressives trying to get rid of Donald Trump as a potential presidential candidate in 2024. I ask them tough questions too, whether I'm a Democrat or not. Because it isn't about Democrats and Republicans. It's not about Donald Trump in 2024. It's about January 6th, 2021. That is what they're actually going after. And that is not what they're trying to do. And you know it as well as I do. They're trying to stop Donald Trump from being a presidential candidate in 2024. They can't possibly withstand another one of those terms of office by that man. And they know it. Especially now. Especially now. When you strike at the king, you better be successful, because if he recovers, he's going to stomp you into the dust. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is going to do if he's reelected in 2024. It will be mighty ugly. And the reverberations will cross not just the political world, but the media world as well. And that's why all these people are ganging up on trying to make sure that Donald Trump is disqualified any way possible. And that's why there is not, in the January 6th committee, there is not equal representation for both sides. They should have done that anyway. They should have done that anyway. Let me tell you something. I got to be perfectly honest with you. If you wanted to impeach Donald Trump, what you should have done is you should have been honest and above board and made it absolutely abundantly possible that President Trump had a chance to defend himself in both impeachments, and you didn't do it. And this is what you get. All you've done is you put it out there so that, okay, Joe Biden's going to get impeached. As soon as the Republicans take office, of course, they probably won't, because they're gutless. But Joe Biden is going to be impeached. Joe Biden is going to be investigated. Joe Biden is going to find himself with all of his underlings being subpoenaed by Congress. And now that they've sent Steve Bannon to jail for 4 months, they're going to have to appear. How many times do you want to hear Biden family people and Biden advisors saying, I'm going to respectfully plead the fifth? How many times do you want to hear that? All the while with the mainstream media and the Democrat Party talking about how ridiculous and unfair this horrifying congressional mess is. That these Republicans are just trying to get revenge for the impeachments of Donald Trump. That has nothing to do with it. There are real problems with the Biden administration from a standpoint of what that family is doing with Joe Biden's name. There are real problems with it. And the fact that there is evidence that's overlooked by the FBI on purpose, evidence overlooked against Hillary Clinton on purpose, all of this stuff, that should be something that bothers everyone, not just people on the right side of the political spectrum. But that's not the case, is it? It's not. And so Donald Trump gets a subpoena. Will he testify? Yeah, probably will. Under oath? Absolutely. He'll have his lawyers there. And instead of, say, for example, okay, I'm going to take the Fifth Amendment, they're going to say, you're trying to lure us into a perjury trap. Here's how you're trying to do it. This is, and anticipate all those questions and explain that this is a perjury trap. That's where you can take, for example, something that somebody said, okay? In an official or semi-official way, and then ask that question again in a different way, misinterpreting the results and then calling it perjury. That's what happened to Mike Flynn. According to the FBI agents that interviewed him first, they didn't think he lied to them. But then James Comey showed up, reinterpreted the entire interview, and said, my God, Mike Flynn lied, and nailed him with it. That is pernicious. That is pernicious prosecution. Not just pernicious prosecution, but it's also oppression under color of office, in my humble opinion. And so that's what they're going to try to do with Donald Trump. Now, if he says, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, well, that's kind of a bad thing for Trump. But if he explains why this is a political question, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then reframes the question in the proper context, as opposed to the context that is willfully misunderstood and misconstrued for the sake of trying to set a perjury trap, then he might have a chance. President Trump brilliantly said, absolutely, I'd like to testify. See, what's interesting about all of that is what the other part of that is. If Donald Trump testifies, how will President Biden keep from testifying? The answer is he's not going to. He can't. He can't. He would have to testify. Can you imagine Joe Biden in a Republican version of the January 6th committee under oath testifying before whatever they call that committee filled with Republicans bent on destruction of Joe Biden, just like the January 6th committee is a committee that was impaneled for the destruction of Donald Trump. Imagine the reverse of that. And by the way, I wouldn't watch that committee hearing either, because I don't want to see the willful destruction of an old man in way over his head. What Joe Biden is going through is abuse. But at this particular moment, I don't know how you shield him from it. This has gotten so in the dirt and so in the gutter and so in the trash dump. The Democrat Party has taken this so far down the tube, it's almost impossible for the Republican Party not to have to join them there and take out Joe Biden. And perhaps we'll actually see Joe Biden or members of his family actually going to jail. And that would be terrible for the entire country. Not so much his son, Hunter. Hunter needs some help. He'd probably find it in prison. As far as Jim Biden, I don't know Jim Biden from deep center field. But all I will tell you is that they put an awful lot of cards on the table, and other people are going to pick them up and play them. And Donald Trump testifying is probably their worst nightmare. They threw that out there just as a canard. And once again, Donald Trump has circumvented their smug political arrogance. Sure, I'll testify. Be the biggest mistake the committee made up to this point. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I was just discussing what will be the outcomes of all of these charges against Donald Trump and the way he's been treated. There will be outcomes here, and they will be painful to watch. See, Donald Trump's a tough guy. You know, his force of personality, his healthy understanding that he is not defined by even the presidency of the United States. See, he doesn't throw his identity into the presidency. He's not defined by the presidency of the United States. He is Donald Trump, and he has been the president of the United States. He's a tough dude. Joe Biden, as we come to this conversation, is not in his best health. He is not in his best mind. And yet, the people of politics are oblivious about what will happen with Joe Biden based on what has happened with Donald Trump. So when you see somebody attacking Donald Trump, for example, the media, 95% of the coverage against Donald Trump was against Donald Trump. 95%. 95%. Nobody's that unpopular, especially nobody that gets 74% of his reelection, or 74 million votes in his reelection effort. I mean, what if it was only 60%? What if the negative reporting on President Trump was only 60%? Do you think he would have stood a chance in losing the 2020 election? No way. This was a coordinated effort by the left, including the mainstream media. But they put out all these cards. They put them on the deck. They put them right there on the table. They've laid them upon the table. And the only thing that's going to keep the Republican Party from not picking those cards up and playing them is just a plain lack of guts. What needs to happen is the Republican Party needs to absolutely kick around everyone responsible for the outrageous negative political and media attacks on Donald Trump. And to do that, they have to stomp all over some Democrat. And guess who's handy? Joe Biden. It's like beating up the little impaired kid. It's awful. It's just plain awful. But it's one of those things that, because of the way things lay upon the table at this particular moment, must be done. Or the Democrats will do this again with another Republican candidate or another Republican president. Because it worked, didn't it? Yes, Biden is a mere puppet. That is true. Yeah, that's what somebody just said about Joe Biden. He is a puppet. He is. Absolutely. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I'm very glad that you are here. I am truly glad that you are here. We've got lots more to discuss as we go through the news of the day. The news of the day, the analysis of that news, the commentary, and the debate. On this Fishing Shirt Friday. If you've got a fishing shirt on and you're listening to the broadcast, send me a picture. Okay, here's a way to do it. Go to the Wells Report at frontier.com. Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. It is Friday. That means we have a weekend coming up. I certainly hope you have great plans for the weekend. If one of those plans might be, say, for example, I don't know, supporting the Wells Report, I wouldn't mind. It would be very, very cool if you did, as a matter of fact. So if you feel like doing it by, say, for example, subscribing, that'd be a good thing to do. Subscribe to the Wells Report. Pass it along to your friends. Send the link to this broadcast to your friends. If they find value in it, ask them to subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the like buttons. That really helps us out. And if you'd like to put your money where my mouth is, if you'd like to support the show financially, you can by going to patreon.com/The Wells Report. patreon.com/The Wells Report. $1 a month. $1 a month. That's all you need. $1 a month. And it would help me a lot. Think about this for just a couple of seconds. 2,000 or 3,000 people. And by the way, there are 2,000 or 3,000 people on my Twitter account, right? Anyway, if 2,000 or 3,000 people send me $1 a month, I'd be okay. It's not a lot of money. I don't need to have the last name Rockefeller. I really don't, especially for this broadcast. What I want to do here is I want to just bring you the news, and I'd like to keep doing it. And since this is an independent broadcast, well, it's mighty thin around here. If you could help us out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So we've been talking a little bit about President Trump, and we've been talking about how he wants to testify, and I think it would be a wonderful idea that he do so. I think it would be great. It would be a great way for him to clear the air. What I would suspect, however, is that it would have to be a completely different circumstance. What I would like to see is President Trump leverage his testimony for a more fair process, which, by the way, would be more effective for everybody concerned. Nobody cares. And they said that this is USA Today said this is the most effective congressional committee investigation in decades. Well, what about the impeachments? Does this investigation eclipse those? And if that's the case, why does it eclipse those? We were talking about impeaching a president and removing him from office. That congressional investigation had better be a whole hell of a lot better than the January 6th investigation. But it wasn't. Didn't have an ABC producer. Yeah. They didn't have an ABC producer running the impeachments. It was so bad that even Gerald Nadler, the ultimate plunger, the ultimate partisan, the ultimate Democrat bomb thrower, told Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, hey, if you don't give this guy a chance to defend himself, none of this is going to matter. And they were right. He was right. He was right. President Trump, they want President Trump not to run in 2024. And in order to do that, what they're trying to do is destroy him. It's character assassination. It is defamation. It is slander. It is libel. But because President Trump is in politics, somehow that's acceptable. I say it's not acceptable. The descendants of Alexander Hamilton really should know better. Alexander Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr on a matter of honor. That was when dueling was legal. What has happened is that in the case of defamation of politicians, the weapons have been confiscated. All that's left is just plain damage. It should be illegal. There should be defamation law available to both sides in politics. And Donald Trump would win a lot of cases. He would. He'd lose a few too. But he'd win a lot more than he'd lose. And this would stop. We don't need to be talking about how ridiculous and stupid somebody is politically, because we just want to give voters a reason to not vote for that person. Politics in these United States needs to be about the issues, not about the personalities. That's all there is to it. And the willingness of people to set aside plain reality for the sake of trying to get someone to remove them from the game based on something that has nothing to do with the state of the nation is detrimental to this nation. Just detrimental. Donald Trump has been under investigation. Here's a perfect example. Donald Trump has been under investigation for decades. Why isn't he in jail? Why isn't he in jail? Why isn't Donald Trump in jail? He's been under investigation for decades. The IRS, he said, we want to see his tax returns. Donald Trump said no. Why did he say no? Because he's under perpetual audit by the IRS. That's why. He's under perpetual audit. Do you believe, especially during the Obama years, do you believe that the IRS, after the mess of Lois Lerner stomping on 501c3s of conservative groups trying to fund themselves, do you honestly believe that the Obama IRS would not have prosecuted Donald Trump if they could have found anything on that guy? The answer is they absolutely would have prosecuted him. And so, the guy's been under investigation forever. He's been charged with things forever, ever. And they have not done anything to be successful with it. He's been impeached twice, not successful. Well, they impeached him, but they didn't remove him from office, which renders the impeachment moot. And so, at some point, you have to stop saying, you know what, this guy is the most horrible human being on the planet because he's a rotten and terrible guy. No, he's the most horrible guy on the planet because he's going to defeat you politically, possibly defeat you politically, and screw up your agenda, which, by the way, needs to be screwed up. We're $31 trillion in debt. We need to do something different. You see, these are the things that actually matter to the country. The rest of this is just plain character assassination. We don't need it. We need people focusing on the issues, not whether or not somebody had a relationship with a girl in college that ended in some strange way involving a handoff of money, especially for a particular medical procedure that is vociferously defended by the people running against that candidate. That has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with politics. The hypocrisy is outrageous. I'm talking about Herschel Walker. They accuse him of paying for his girlfriend's abortion. Well, I'm sorry, the left and Democrats in general think that the entire world revolves around abortion. All Herschel Walker was doing was participating in the great triumph that is Democrat politics in these United States, and yet they're trying to hang him for it? Really? See? What they need to be talking about is what needs to happen in the United States Senate. Warnock shouldn't be talking about Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker shouldn't be talking about Warnock. I don't give a damn whether Warnock runs a lousy apartment building. If people don't want to live in that apartment building, they think it's crap. If they think the elevators need to be fixed and they don't get fixed, move away. Move away. I want to know what Warnock is going to do as a senator. I want to know what Walker's going to do as a senator. The focus is completely skewed. I don't give a damn whether Donald Trump's a good guy. Guess what? Donald Trump's not a good guy. Okay? Neither is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not a good guy. Barack Obama is not a good guy. George W. Bush, not a good guy. Bill Clinton, not a good guy. All the way back to Ronald Reagan and beyond. These are not good men. I mean, they're not nice guys. These guys are sharks. You screw with them and they will snip you in half and have done so. That's all there is to it. Warnock was illegitimate and put in by fraud. I don't care. He's a United States Senator. I don't care how he got there. He's not the issue. The issue is what he's going to do in the United States Senate with a country that's $31 trillion in debt. I want to know what senators are going to do when they read the Constitution of the United States and it says that they will provide a secure border and they are not doing it. What are those senators going to do? I want to know what they are going to do to really solve, say, for example, abortion in this land. I want them to come up with a bill that determines when life begins, because it isn't at the moment of birth. It's at the moment of viability. Well, when is that? I want that codified. I want that codified more than I want Roe v. Wade codified. If you codify when life begins as a person in vitro, if you can, not in vitro, but you know, when they're in gestation, if you define that, you don't have to codify Roe v. Wade. Done. That's what I want a senator to do. Lindsey Graham, by the way, tried. He said 15 weeks. And he was hammered. Why was he hammered? Well, because it made too much sense. Well, guess what? I'm tired of arcane garbage in the United States government. I want these problems solved. Will Raphael Warnock solve them? If he actually will, and he actually has a track record of doing so, by all means, hell, I'll support him, whether he's a Democrat or not. But he's not. He's just a game player. Herschel Walker, is he going to solve those problems? Is he going to do everything he can to solve the problems I'm talking about? Maybe. Does he have a record of doing so? No. So who do you vote for in that race? What we are doing is voting for the status quo ante. If you keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. And we're $31 trillion in debt. Are we going to keep this going on as voters in the United States? Are we going to keep this going on until it's $62 trillion? Until it's $124 trillion? What are we going to do here? We get focused on all this garbage that has nothing to do with the actual job at hand, and then we elect people based on that. You can't vote for such and such. My God, he plays badminton with gerbils. What? Yeah, those poor little defenseless creatures. He just hits them with a badminton racket and laughs evilly. He cannot be a member of the House of Representatives. Excuse me? Does he own the gerbils? Yes. How about the racket? Is he hitting him into somebody else's yard? No. Okay. What's he going to do about a $31 trillion national debt? That's what I want to know. My God, don't you care about the gerbil? No, I don't. It means nothing to me. Well, you know, he smacked his girlfriend on the butt once, and she complained. Okay, but what's he going to do about the $31 trillion worth of debt? You are just a callous, horrifyingly terrible person. Yeah. What are they going to do about the national debt? And voters of America don't do that. They run for cover as soon as somebody says something stupid. Like, my God, you're just a horrifying person. That you're a Nazi. No, I'm not. I'm an American voter trying to figure out what they're going to do with a $31 trillion debt. Are you tracking in this conversation? What about the gerbils? I don't care. I want the country fixed. I want the country fixed. If you can fix the country by passing a bill that protects gerbils as an endangered species, go for it. But right now, I want that deficit fixed. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. In the chat room today, we're still talking about the duality of the legal system that has to do with Steve Bannon being sentenced to 4 months in jail and a $6,500 fine for contempt of Congress, when Eric Holder in 2014 faced nothing. That is absolutely indefensible. It's absolutely indefensible. You know, the judge in the case of Stephen Bannon said, you know, we just can't allow the example of Steve Bannon ignoring, flouting Congress and just saying, I'm not going to testify. And that's fine. And that's real. And that's true. I get it. I think it's absolutely, I think that's right on the button. Now explain Eric Holder under far worse circumstances. You want to talk about, that's just plain government law breaking. The Fast and Furious mess? Fast and Furious was a circumstance whereby drug cartels through straw buyers were enabled to buy American weapons in American gun stores. Because supposedly there was a problem with these weapons being smuggled into Mexico. And they were being used in all this cartel violence, and we had to stop it. Actually, what they were trying to do is they were trying to create new gun law. And so what they did was they allowed straw purchases. They broke the law the federal government passed. The federal government broke federal law and sold those weapons. By all means, the people selling them said, wait a minute, this is a straw purchase all day. Go ahead and let it go. Well, wait a minute. No, go ahead and let it go. And what happened? Brian Terry got killed by one of those weapons. The Republican-controlled Congress subpoenaed Eric Holder. Bring us the papers. Bring us your testimony. You gotta testify as to why it is that you're breaking federal law in this gun running operation. They said it was a botched up gun running operation. No, it wasn't. It was a perfect gun running operation. They ran guns into Mexico and they were used to kill a federal officer. It was perfect. And they wanted to do it so that they could pass new gun laws to curtail and infringe upon our gun rights. Now, which of those two things is more important? Steve Bannon was not on the grounds of the Capitol riot on January 6th. He wasn't even a part of the policymaking process. He had already left the Trump administration. This is not anything that got a federal officer killed in any way, shape, or form. Well, what about the officers? They died of suicide and natural causes. The only person that actually got killed during January 6th was Ashley Babbitt, shot in the face by a federal officer who was decorated. He was decorated for it. I still don't know what the deadly force was. Don't know what the deadly force was. The only thing I think about is, how would they have explained it if Ashley Babbitt was black? How do you suppose that would have gone down? Well, we know what happened in the summer of 2020. George Floyd got killed by a police officer. He was black. And they damn near burned down the country. Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, gets shot in the face in the middle of, a redress of grievances. Okay, call it a riot if you want to. It was a riot. I think it was ridiculous. I think it was stupid. If I'd have been there and said, don't go across that border, it's a setup. That's what I would have said. I wasn't there. I wasn't able to stop them. Don't go into the Capitol. Leave them alone. This is all we need to do. Now let's sing the national anthem and wave our flags and go home. That's what Steve Bannon was asked to testify on. He said, buzz off. Eric Holder is running a gun running operation that gets a federal officer killed. He says, buzz off. Steve Bannon goes to jail for 4 months. Eric Holder is still laughing. Somebody explain that to me. Especially one of you, one of you denizens of the left on the chat room. You explain that to me. You tell me why that's okay. Love to hear your answer. But there isn't one, is there? This is not a biased broadcast. This is a truthful one. Our motto is truth spoken here. Our motto, our belief system involves everybody having a say. Where are you? You were listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Friday in progress. Friday in progress. Friday in progress. Have you got your fishing shirt on? Fishing Shirt Friday. And by the way, it's October. You can wear a long sleeve fishing shirt. Back with more in just a couple of moments. Hour number 3, right around the corner on the Wells Report. Thanks, you guys. God bless all y'all. I appreciate it. Alan, I hope you saw my note. That would be nice if you did. Back in a flash. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary. That's not the news. Then we debate. That's not the news either, but out of debate often comes news. That's what we seek to have here on the Wells Report. And we're doing this for Friday. And the weekend's right around the corner, and I thank you very much for being here. I'll tell you how you can help us out coming up in just a little bit here on the Wells Report. So you may have noticed yesterday there was no edition of the Wells Report. That was because of a couple of different things. One, my wife has been out of town for about 4 days. And Colton and I were batching it, and horrible things ensue when it comes to, shall we say, house hygiene when the mom is gone. And that was true. So, well, the dutiful little mice, when mom's coming back, suddenly have to clean the house, and I had to do that. We also have some guests here, so I had to make sure that they didn't think we were slobs, even though we are. Anyway, so what I did was I mopped and I vacuumed and I cleaned bathrooms and I took out garbage and I did dishes and I did a whole bunch of things yesterday, so I was not there. So please forgive me on that, okay? But I had to do that. And so when we did not do that show, I heard about that too. After me not doing the show and after me cleaning up the house and so on and so forth, what I then did is I had my drums loaded up in my Tahoe and I went out. Well, I had to, Alicia says, good hubby, JD. Well, Colton helped too. About that much. I did all the work. Okay. So anyway, well, I did the dishes, Dad. Did you do all of them? No. Anyway, enough of that. So after that was all over, I went to play this band gig. You may not know this, but I'm also, I'm a drummer. I'm actually working. I'm getting paid to play drums. And yesterday was my, yes, even though I admitted my slobbishness in a private chat with the said guest who is now staying with us. Yes, Yvonne, that is completely correct. Okay? So there. But just because, you see, it's like this. She's wondering why is it that I spent all that time cleaning up the house and not doing the Wells Report when the person who was coming to stay in the house, had already heard that I'm taking the day off to clean up the house because I'm slobby, and so on and so on. Well, the circumstance is this. You listen to me talk about the fact that, okay, so we're kind of slobby around the house from time to time. But you don't actually believe it. And the reason you don't believe it is because when you come over to my house, it looks pretty good. Okay? But you didn't see it before you came to my house. But you still don't believe these guys can't be slobs. And we're not really, but things get cluttered and we got dogs and muddy footprints and so on and so forth and blah 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 blah. And I had to mop all that stuff up and yeah. So you don't think, but if you were to come over to my house and I hadn't done any of that stuff, you said, my God, these people are slobs. It's true. So the perception of slobbiness can be kept as a perception if you don't actually have hard proof. Mark 8 eyeballs on slobbyism. Right? Right. So anyway, the person that she's saying coming over to my house, she goes, these guys aren't slobs. He was just playing. Not really. But anyway. So after the cleanup of the house, my drums are all loaded up in my Tahoe, and I went out and played, like a 2-hour gig with a band that I'm in called Flowers, Pierce, Wells, and Nunn. And we had a really good time. We actually sounded pretty good. It was our first gig. The band just got together. We had one rehearsal, and the rehearsal was 4 hours. The gig was 2 hours. I think we overprepared. Anyway, that being said, I went out there, and people on this chat room right here actually saw me play, and they can tell you how I did. Okay? They can tell you how I did. Jessica and Gary came out. It was really nice meeting Gary, by the way. I mean, Jessica and I have run across each other a lot, and Kelly was there too. And so they listened to us play, and they were going, not bad. Yeah, it wasn't bad. So anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. So we played all that. So we played all that stuff last night, and it was a lot of fun. And I really want to thank those people who support what we're doing. It's awfully nice. It's very cool. Sounds awesome. Rock on, dude. That's so cool. It's fun. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, so we missed yesterday's show. So please forgive me. And that won't happen very often. I'm going to make it to one of your shows someday. You talking about the band show? Yeah. And by the way, I do have the capability of taking this show on the road, and I'm going to be doing so. I've got to go to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. I got to go to ODOT. Got to go to ODOT and broadcast this broadcast. Got to do it. And I will. I would love to hear the band. Unfortunately, I live too far away. That's right. Aren't you out of state, Alicia? Anyway, speaking of out of state, perfect tie-in. Absolutely perfect tie-in. Why is the border of the United States open? Why is the border of the United States open? You know, everybody talks about it. The border, the border, the border, the border, the border, the border. It's wide open, wide open, wide open. No security, blah, 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 blah. And I've seen it for myself. I've actually been down there on more than one occasion. I've spent nearly a year on that border, serving the state of Texas, by the way. I've been down there on that border, and it's a mess. Well, why is it open? Why is it open? Well, I can tell you why it's open from my point of view. You want to hear it? Okay, good. Here's the situation. The reason the border's open is because the left of the United States is seeking to re-demography the United States. Somehow, leftist progressives believe that the most important thing that needs to happen in this nation is the white majority should be set aside in favor of a non-white majority. That's what they're trying to get done, trying to re-demography the United States. They got a big job. Okay, like 65% of America is white. And if you would just stop and think for a minute, from a political standpoint, it kind of sort of makes sense that what they would do is they would try to stomp all over the white majority. Why? Why is that a problem? Why does the white majority pose a fundamental risk to leftist politics? Well, because if white people in America would band together like black people in America do and like brown people in America do, if that would happen, there would be no minority benefit from government. Or if there would be a minority benefit from government, it would be the minority benefit from government given to them by the white majority. But you'll note that the left wants the white majority cast in the role of oppressors. So instead of being benevolent in sharing the wealth, which is, by the way, what the white majority does, what they do is they attack our religion, Christianity. 83% of us are Christian. They attack our Christian traditions during Christmas and Easter. And they call us bigots. The other day, somebody said anybody that cares about the ravages of inflation is just like Nazis, because that's what the Nazis said in late 30s. They said, we'll do something about inflation. And then they made the Nazi economic policy the exact same thing as the Nazi Jewish annihilation policy. Which, by the way, I can see why they would do that, except that in this particular model, it falls on its face, because caring about inflation has nothing to do with what was going on in Germany in the 1930s. And the people that are trying to do something about inflation now are not the same people that were trying to do something about inflation in Germany in the 1930s. We are not Nazis, and to say that we are is just ridiculous. The guy ought to get slapped, figuratively, of course. Anyway, so what you try to do is you try to subdue the majority so that you have some sort of power in the United States, because if the white folk all banded together, you wouldn't. And so that's what they're trying to do in order to get their policies through. They need to get them through people that disagree with them. And where do you find people that do agree with you if you're the left? Well, since the left wants to be socialist, what you do is you go to countries that are socialist and you import their people. And that's exactly what we're doing with the people of Central America. They're running through Mexico, run by the drug cartels, by the way. There's no government in Mexico. It's run by the drug cartels. They're bringing them here. They're not here to do work that Americans don't want to do. They're here to cast votes Americans won't cast. That's why they're coming here. That's why the border is open. And so when anybody tries to close it, it's because they're just degenerate bigots that hate Hispanics. That's the whole reason for it. That's all there is. Again, nothing to do with reality whatsoever. But when you've got the mainstream media backing up every move you make, suddenly people, that say we should have a border, well, they're all bigots. It's worked beautifully for decades. And so what they're trying to do is curry favor with Hispanic voters here in the United States. And so you don't want to stop other Hispanics from coming to the United States. You try to give them a reason to be, shall we say, aggrieved. Black Americans in the United States have a great reason to be aggrieved. They came here as slaves. And that's a crime against humanity. And so one of their great icons was Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was a rallying point for those people. It was wonderful, actually. Well, now they're trying to do that with Hispanics. How are they doing that? Well, with Cesar Chavez, to try to create another militant, aggrieved minority population for political exploitation, just like they've politically exploited the black population in the United States. Have they actually paid off on the promise? I've got my observations, but ask Black Americans if they've paid off on the promise. Ask them. The point is that all of this is a political exercise. It has nothing to do with governance. It has nothing to do with reality, except it has to do with the future of the leftist political agenda. How does this all come together? Stick around. I'll explain it, put it all together for you next on the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We were talking a little bit about why the southern border is actually open. Southern border is actually open to further a leftist political agenda. That's what's going on. And I explained why. It is a strategy of political science. You divide and conquer. You divide the populace between, in this case, white and black, white and brown. And what you're trying to do is redemography the United States of America by leaving the border open and inviting everybody to come. And that's exactly what they're doing. Now, the question is it working? Is it working to the balance or to the benefit of the left? They are the spoilers in all of this. Is it working? Well, according to Pew Research, the majority of registered voters who are most concerned about immigration, the economic climate, and crime. The majority of registered voters who are most concerned about immigration, economic climate, and crime would vote for a Republican candidate this fall. This is according to a poll that also found the majority of Hispanic voters disapprove of President Joe Biden's handling of his job. A Pew Research Center poll revealed among the 18 issues surveyed, inflation is a top concern. 79% of registered voters say so ahead of the midterms. 17% of respondents said the economy is in good shape. 82% said that economic conditions are poor. 7 in 10 registered voters, 70%, said the future of democracy was a very important issue. According to the poll, 57% of respondents who are very concerned about immigration said that a Republican candidate would best handle the crisis at the border. After approximately 2 million migrants crossed the border this fiscal year. The poll also found that 47% of registered voters who say the economy is a very important issue would like to see a Republican representing their district to tackle inflation and rising costs. Republicans are also the party of choice to 50% of those who are most concerned about violent crime. Among those who view abortion as a very important midterm issue, 55% would lean toward voting for a Democrat candidate. Democrats also lead among respondents who feel the future of democracy and health care are very important issues. Well, that's a conflation, by the way. Yeah, everybody wants good health, but Democrats have no idea how to give us that, just like they don't have any idea how to give us anything else. Okay? President Joe Biden received a job approval rating of 38% and a disapproval rating of almost 60% in a national poll. President Biden's approval rating saw a major decline in recent months after a Pew Research poll found the president's approval among registered voters stood at 43% in March, down to 38% now. It's awful. The majority of registered Hispanic voters, 50%, half, disapprove of President Biden's handling of the presidency. 46% approve. Among those surveyed, 59% disapproved of Biden. 38% approved of his job as president. The national survey conducted from 10 to 16 October with a margin of error of plus or minus 1.7 percentage points. So, we have the wide open border because the left believes that we need to redemography the United States of America to the benefit of a leftist agenda. It's not working. Meantime, what we're doing here is we're putting incredible strain on the economy. We're putting incredible strain on social services, our schools, because all these people come in here, bring their kids, and they don't speak English well because they don't come from America and because they're not prepared to actually immigrate. So once again, Democrats are working to try to get as many of these people in the country, but they're probably shooting themselves in the foot politically by doing so. And so why are they doing it in the first place? I think it's because they're kind of dumb. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Yeah. 817-379-2172. Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah. Goodness sakes. How did that happen? So I'm sitting here talking about how one of the most important circumstances ever. Why our southern border is open. Why is our southern border open? And I'm explaining all the demographic reasons and how all this works and what the actual political science is involved in all of this and how it may be backfiring on the people that are trying to make it happen, rendering the entire exercise moot, which means we have a border that's wide open. The security issues are enormous. National security, a problem, all of this kind of stuff. And I look down at the chat room to see how people are interacting with this brilliant, incisive, intellectual, acumen-filled opportunity to become enlightened. And what are they talking about? Alicia is asking whether or not anybody else on this broadcast or in this chat room has a dog that slobbers. Excuse me? I wasn't talking about dog slobber. I mean, sure, dog slobber can be a problem. If you have a Mastiff or a St. Bernard, Newfies occasionally slobber. But what does that have to do with the vast expanse of the American southern border, with people crossing it, et cetera, et cetera? What does that have to... Huh? Oh, and she was talking during the commercial break. Oh, that's why. Okay. Never mind. Look at all this. It's amazing. So let's talk a little bit more about something that we had been working on here in the Wells Report, okay? And it has to do with President Donald Trump and his assertion of executive privilege on the documents seized at Mar-a-Lago, okay? And there are issues having to do with this, okay, that need to be discussed. This is how CNN is reporting this story. Former President Donald Trump is claiming that records, clemency requests were kept at Mar-a-Lago and that they are his personal property and should not be handed back to the federal government, according to the Justice Department. Well, he said to the Justice Department in a court filing. Well, actually, no, let me get this straight. Former President Trump is indeed claiming that records, clemency requests were kept at Mar-a-Lago are his personal property, and the DOJ put it in a court filing and said, we disagree. The filing addresses a dispute over 15 documents, demonstrates the potential legal slog, and that there are 22,000 total documents to review. Special Master Raymond Dearie is reviewing Trump's claims of executive privilege over the documents, which were seized from the former president's Florida home in August. 6 of the documents described by the DOJ are clemency requests Trump received while he was president. 2 documents relate to immigration and border control laws, presidential powers, and initiatives. 1 document is a, quote, printed email message from a person at one military academy addressed to the president in his official capacity about the academy's sports program and its relationship to martial spirit. The message relates at a minimum to the ceremonial duties of the president, if not to his commander-in-chief powers, according to the filing. By the way, whoever's responsible for that, a person at one of the military academies addressed to the president in his official capacity, jumped chain of command to the commander-in-chief. That should get your butt kicked really hard. You just don't do that. It's unbelievable. Let's see. President Trump's team categorized those papers as his personal records. The federal government says they are presidential records, not President Trump's to keep. And like I said before, this is the give and take between the National Archives and former presidents that has always happened. It has never, ever actually been carefully defined. Executive privilege has never been carefully defined, even back during the Trump days. or excuse me, I'm sorry, even back during the Nixon days. Nixon asserted executive privilege, and that was turned aside. Was that a good opportunity to actually define the privilege as to what executive privilege actually means? Yes. Did it actually happen? No. Why? Well, because it's better to not have a hard and fast policy that you have to live with. What's going wrong here is Democrats are trying to nail President Trump with anything they possibly can, up to and including questioning the absolute veracity of executive privilege. And they've actually gone on the record saying a former president doesn't have executive privilege. In point of fact, they do. They absolutely do. For the same reason they had executive privilege when they were the president. And oh, by the way, the sitting president cannot revoke the executive privilege of a now former president. All of these things now have to be actually defined in the judicial branch, which, by the way, is their job. Okay, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. What's going on are the machinations between, okay, President Trump asserts executive privilege. The mainstream media, the left, they disagree. And the judicial branch of the U.S. government hasn't decided yet. And all of this space in between is rife for the mainstream media to play politics with. What's been traditional? Well, nobody's ever had to go through all of this stuff, but then again, nobody like Trump was ever elected president of the United States. So all of this being said, like I told you months ago, we're going to finally get a better idea of what executive privilege actually is. And then what we're going to see is we're going to see whether or not those rules are actually followed, or whether or not they're just followed until, say, for example, the second Trump administration is over if he gets reelected. And then they go back to the status quo ante of having an argument every time there's a former president about presidential records in the archives. And none of this matters. See, all of this hue and cry about Trump's executive privilege, all this is an attempt, once again, to nail Donald Trump with something. President Trump asserts that there are certain things that are not the property of the archives. And oh, by the way, what's the difference between the National Archives and a presidential library? If all these documents are accounted for the National Archives, the only thing that's different from the National Archives and, say, for example, a presidential library is the location where the actual papers are. And oh, by the way, if you want to go ahead and try to steal something from a presidential library, good luck. It's plain ridiculous. So anyway, Judge Dearie, who's the special master going through all of this stuff, previously said in a phone call with the parties he was having trouble squaring how President Trump could claim some documents were both personal and protected by executive privilege. 4 records are in that category among Thursday's list of 15. Fortunately, Raymond Dearie, the special master, doesn't have to decide that. That is the federal judge in charge of all of this. Okay, so you don't have to worry about any of that. Trump's attorneys replied, saying the Justice Department account of the 15 documents are not fully accurate, and they plan a full response next Monday. Dearie has since instructed the Trump team the deadline for such filing is today. The Trump team and the Justice Department will continue to work through much of the 22,000 records over the coming months. Dearie is set to make determinations by mid-December. He's going to actually have to have an extension. Okay? Now, that is according to CNN. The USA Today version of the story goes like this. Justice Department lawyers said disputes with Donald Trump about documents seized at Mar-a-Lago involved 9 records. So obviously there are people that just don't get this. I mean, obviously the story is everywhere, right? The special master reviewing the records, Raymond Dearie, will determine whether to block the department's access to the records because they are personal or fall under executive privilege. And by the way, Dearie asking, it's hard to say that these are personal papers and still covered by executive privilege. That's not a problem. What are you doing? It's not either or. A personal paper can fall under executive privilege and vice versa. Come on. This is not hard. And once again, it makes me wonder whether or not Raymond Dearie is playing politics. It seems like he is. Anyway, we'll see. It's only a matter of time. The disputes edged into territory Dearie warned lawyers on both sides to avoid. Department lawyers said that Trump claimed 2 documents were both personal and fell under executive privilege as a government record. Dearie said making both claims for the same document was incongruous because a document couldn't be both a personal and government record. Of course it could be. It's ridiculous. I don't want to be dealing with nonsense objections or nonsense assertions. Well, okay, but what if they're not nonsense? There are 21,792 classified documents seized during an FBI raid in August. FBI agents were searching for evidence of criminal violations of the Espionage Act or obstruction of justice. Well, as we found out with Hillary Clinton, there are no violations of the Espionage Act. U.S. Judge Eileen Cannon, who's actually in charge of this, she doesn't have to, that's why Judge Dearie really doesn't have to worry about any of these questions. She's going to decide these. She appointed Dearie to determine whether the government should be blocked from using any of the documents in its criminal investigation because they're personal or fall under attorney-client privilege or executive privilege. Exactly. In the context, this gets back to my point. In the context of all of this, it makes no difference whether it's a personal property or an executive privilege property or attorney-client privilege. It belongs to President Trump, period. 6 of the 9 contested documents deal with clemency requests and were received by President Trump in his official capacity to grant pardons. 2 documents dealt with immigration initiatives and government records because of Trump's role overseeing immigration policy and border security. 1 document is an email from a person at the military academy that violated chain of command. Probably not a smart move. Not a bit. Okay? So anyway, there's that. And then when we're talking about these, and this is something else I brought up that I need to bring up again, some documents, this according to the Washington Post, some documents seized at Mar-a-Lago contain sensitive secrets about Iran and China. This from through the auspices of CNN from the Washington Post. Documents containing highly sensitive intelligence about Iran and China were among those discovered by the FBI from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. Disclosure of the document's contents could expose U.S. intelligence gathering methods. People familiar with the matter told the Washington Post at least one of the documents describes Iran's missile program. Others describe highly sensitive intelligence involving China. Well, you know, here's my situation. You don't get to have it both ways, okay? You just don't get to have it both ways. You cannot say that these documents could expose the sources and methods and human intelligence of highly sensitive things. You can't claim that that's the case and then print what all these documents are actually about in wide open press. You can't be outraged about both things. Margie says it best. It's all complete nonsense. Correct. Okay. Once again, if these are all fired, hopelessly sensitive pieces of material, why are we printing them in the Washington Post and CNN? And who's responsible for Washington Post and CNN having this information? A leaker at either the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of National Intelligence, or the FBI, or the DOJ. You can't have it both ways. It can't be so sensitive that it can't be talked about, and then you print it in the newspaper. You just can't do that. It's ridiculous. Okay? Just plain stupid. CNN has reported that since the FBI search in August, U.S. intelligence community has restarted work on the classification review, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These guys better be careful. This review of all of these classified documents, If they say, my God, it was horrifyingly terrible that they were out there, it was terrible they were being guarded by the Secret Service. So what are you going to do? You're going to crap on the Secret Service? All these materials were guarded. They were under guard. Sorry. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're going to finish it up here in just a couple of seconds. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt has done good things. I'm actually kind of happy with him, in fact, and I'll explain more coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. Back with more next. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Hi. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I just realized I put that article up in the wrong spot. Not a good thing to do. As we come to the end of this, there's an opportunity for clarity that I'd like to get to. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt has taken steps to prevent children from getting gender therapy out of his, quote, duty to protect minors, unquote. The Republicans signed a bill this month that prohibits the University of Oklahoma Medical Center from using COVID relief funds to bankroll gender reassignment treatment for children. Stitt also called on state legislatures to pass a statewide or the state legislature to pass a statewide ban when it reconvenes in February. We have a duty to protect minors from a lot of things. We don't let them drink. We don't let them get tattoos. Their brains aren't fully developed. This is not something we're going to allow to be done to minors and use taxpayer dollars. OU Children's Hospitals had provided a variety of gender treatments, including puberty blockers and hormone therapy. But the medical center said it ceased certain treatment due to Stitt's legislation. It's not Stitt's legislation. It's Oklahoma's legislation. Okay. First of all, we don't have one-man rule in this country, not even at the state level. Stitt also said that what some people call gender transition surgery is life-changing, altering sterilization surgeries. Correct. Advocates for gender-affirming therapy for minors have said early access to puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries can prevent suicide among trans youth. This, according to a 2021 survey of nearly 35,000 transgender youth, finding that 23% of those who could not access gender-affirming hormone therapy attempted suicide, compared to under 15% for those who could. Okay, so this guy, this Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt, good idea. Okay. Now let's get to the reality of this as far as I see. Here's the situation. There may be a kid out there that doesn't think he's the right gender. That's fine. And you could arguably say that, well, it's his decision whether he wants to proceed with that or not. True. But that shouldn't happen until he's 18 or she's 18. You don't do that until he or she are 18, because it's their decision to make, not their parents, not their schools, not their pediatricians. It's their decision to make. They cannot make a decision at that level at age 11, 12, 13, 14. You can make a decision at that level after 18. If you feel like you really want to go that direction, go right ahead. When you're a legal adult, make your legal decision. Do it. It's perfectly fine. But until you're 18 years of age, no. What about all the trans youth that are going to commit suicide? Well, you know what they really need is they need psychological therapy to address a couple of different things. First of all, their ideation that suicide is a solution. That's pretty typical whether you're a transgender youth or not. You get them proper psychological care. But you see, the problem with proper psychological care is that maybe what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to discuss why this person feels gender dysphoric in the first place. And according to the left, well, these crazy psychologists are going to try to talk them out of their gender dysphoria. I'm sorry, isn't that what psychology is about? Especially, and since you don't know, you as a leftist progressive policymaker, you have no idea what's going on inside that kid's head. You're not trained for that kind of stuff. The psychologist is. They're going to work with that person to keep them from killing themselves, to A, and B, find the root of gender dysphoria in the first place. The reason that kids attempt suicide if they're gender dysphoric has nothing to do with whether or not they can be treated when they're underage. It doesn't. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with that they've undergone some kind of a psychological trauma that needs to be addressed now. They need to have somebody talk to them about it. And we're not going to sterilize little kids. We're not going to change their physical gender. What we're going to do is we're going to help them through this phase until they can make their own decisions. That's what we're going to do. Instead of allowing schools to get that done, or leftist politicians to get that done. That's what all this is for. And that's what Kevin Stitt is doing. Giving those kids a chance to be able to make a rational decision as an adult instead of a coerced decision as a juvenile. Does that make sense to anybody but me? Yeah, I think so. Just take care of the kids. Stop trying to convince them that they're wrong. Stop trying to convince them that they have a problem. The reason these kids try to do themselves in is because every time they go to the bathroom or every time they take a shower, it reaffirms in their head that they're not who they're supposed to be. And that's distressing. It has nothing to do with whether or not there's a support system to change their bodies. Have a great weekend. This has been the Wells Report. See you on Monday. And just like that, we're done. All right, Langston. First of all, they were packed up by the GAO. They were carted out to a truck in broad daylight, not out of the skiff. That's because the documents were not in a skiff to begin with. Okay, there you go. Great job, Governor. Yeah. All the chemical treatments. Yeah. Okay. Great show, JD. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Okay. So you make statements that are annoying to people, Langston. You say things like President Trump will see the inside of a jail cell. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's just an obnoxious, nonsensical statement. And as a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old probably now, you're in the company of adults. Okay? You know, obnoxious teenagers, they're kind of sort of something that we're over, okay? And when you're our age and when you're down the road a little bit, you'll be finished with obnoxious teenagers too. So don't be obnoxious. I know you can do it. My son Colton, he's some of the best company I've ever been around. And he's been 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. He's always been a good because he's not obnoxious. You know, that's all there is to it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this kind of stuff. I want you to not bait the bulldog. Someone uses racial slurs to play the race game, but you allow it. I do not allow it. That's a canard. Every time I see racial slams, I stomp them out because racism is a crime against humanity, Langston. Okay, I don't allow racism on any of these pages. And I absolutely am offended that you would even assert such a ridiculous, stupid, garbage thing. See, this is how you piss people off, Langston. You have no idea. You just don't get it. I don't allow racism on this page. Well, I can't control what Gary says? Sure I can. The same way I control what you say. Gary, stop it. Except Gary's enough of an adult to actually do it. That's the difference between you and Gary. Get it? In other words, Langston. He doesn't get it. Well, yeah, he does. All I want to tell you is this. Langston, once again, you're baiting the bulldog. You are proving my point with every insolent statement that you're making. Every single one of them. Don't do this. This is not me saying that you can't have an opinion. This is me saying you can't be rude and obnoxious. Don't be rude and obnoxious, just like you're being right now with me. I'm trying to keep you in this chat room. I fired you twice. I've also unfired you twice. Your show, my rules. Exactly. And they fit for you. Just make your point, but be nice about it. Don't be a jerk. Okay? Don't be a jerk. Trump will see the inside of a jail cell. Well, Mr. Dictator Langston is back. Thanks very much for your assertion. No, that's not what you do. You say, do you think Donald Trump's going to see the inside of a jail cell? No, I don't think so. We don't put our ex-presidents in jail. Yeah, exactly. See what Margie's saying about you, Langston? Some people just like to cause trouble. They get off on it. You know, I'm sitting here trying to do a radio broadcast. I'm talking about you and Isaac's crap. Why is that? That's the kind of obnoxious jerkiness that I'm trying to avoid here. It's not that your opinions are bad. Your opinions are fine. But the way you handle people on this, they attack you, and then you're saying, my God, I'm aggrieved. Well, stop being a jerk. Maybe they'll stop attacking you. Why don't you be nice? Both of you. Why do I bring up Isaac? Because you're birds of a feather, Langston. You guys do the same things. You guys do the same things. It's like I brought up Jessica and Gary together in a conversation earlier today. You know why? Because they did the same thing. What did they do? They showed up on my gig yesterday. It was really nice, actually. See, that's why I bring up Isaac. Because you guys say a lot of the same things. Speaking of which, I'm going to get on with my weekend. I get to rest now. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Langston, thanks very much. Later, take good care. God bless. All the rest of you, take good care. And I will be seeing you on Monday with another edition of the Wells Report.